This week on The Amazing Grace, teams traveled to Santiago, Chile, and it was action-packed, so let's get into it. Okay, first up, this was kind of exciting, I thought. The teams, once they arrived to Chile, they had to drive, I guess, to the spot where Marilyn Monroe's Thunderbird is now, I guess, homed or housed or whatever you would say that.
It's always so interesting to see how teams do driving on their own.
I know.
Especially with stick shift and just, you know, anymore people don't use paper maps.
Right,
Or
well,
know
that's
how to read them.
And I think about that often. How, like, you know, in our day-to-day lives, like, we typically use whatever's on our phone, right? If we don't know where we're going, and I'm like, on The Amazing Race, you don't get that. There's no technology involved at all. You are fully using a map, and if you can't figure it out, well, you have to, because that's your only option.
I mean, I'd say half these teams are probably of age where they never used a map to drive.
Yeah.
So
everyone finds it confusing. I would say even some of like the older teams are also just as confused.
Well, I mean,
you
it
know,
doesn't help that it's all in Spanish, probably too.
right? It's also typically a different language, and like we said, you're not familiar with the lay of the land there either. So then we move into the roadblock for this episode, which was who's on board. And so typically, or basically, what they had to do was they were at this local like skate park, I guess, if you will, and they had to assemble a skateboard. But the thing is, it was very specific. First of all, you had to figure out how to assemble it, and I don't believe there was like any instructions, so it was just kind of like DIY. But also the skateboard wheel colors were very, very important.
Well, they had to match, like even like some of the, I don't even know what it's called. They had like one piece turned the wrong way quite a few teams. And I don't think a lot of teams realized that they needed to actually match. I think they just thought they had to put the board together however they wanted to.
Yeah.
I would have been a little confused on where like the nuts and bolts and like the lug nuts and everything go.
It's pretty intricate. I think it would have been kind of difficult. I think the color of the wheels may have been okay. But what was also interesting was like I said, the intricacy of it, because where a lot of them were told no by the judge was like those smaller pieces under like the padding or whatever it was, like were in the wrong place or flipped. And I was like, that's just something you probably wouldn't think of if you're not used to building these. So
it's also kind of funny that, you know, when people read the clue for what the roadblock is, that I think some of them thought they were going to be riding a skateboard almost instead of building it.
Which actually is a great point, because you take the cousins, Kashiri and Karishma, and one of them was like, oh, I can do it, I've ridden a skateboard. And then when they actually opened it and found out what it was, the other one was like, oh, dang, I should have done it, because I'm the one that's like, I was building furniture, always like at IKEA and da-da-da. And the other one was like, not familiar at all. So it is funny how like you may go in with an idea that a challenge is one way, and then it's actually the complete opposite.
Exactly.
The other funny thing I want to point out real quick is I love that each of these challenges have like a local judge. And this one was like, I'm assuming she was probably between 13 and 15 years old, some girl. And it was so funny how she like gave them no time of day. It was like they would hand the skateboard and she was like, or they would hand it and she's like, yeah. And I thought that was just so, I don't know, it's just funny how they do that.
Right,
but,
agreed.
So then we move into this episode's detour. So it was perform for pesos or climb for clues. So we'll start with the perform for pesos. So basically they had to go to this, I forget the...
It was just kind of along a nice touristy area, I'd say.
Yeah, and it was I want to say it's called a Cheech and Chera band or something like that. But basically they had to figure out how to play this like specific drum that you put on your back. And then they had to walk around this park and basically get pesos from locals.
Like 2,600.
Yeah, you had to get a certain amount to pass. And it was kind of interesting because in retrospect, this really seemed pretty easy, but some teams, like, for example, Rod and Letitia, like, Rod was like, oh, this is super easy, but then Letitia was very nervous to ask people for money. She wasn't
be aggressive and be
putting
like,
herself out there
enough.
Yes.
Which, I mean, I don't blame her. I don't think I'd want to do that either.
Yeah, no.
But also, I don't know if I could do rock climbing.
Right, and that was what was interesting. So then you flip it to the other one, the climb for clues, and you basically went to kind of like, I guess what looked like another park, and you had to literally rock climb this wall, and then there was a bunch of clues at the top, and you just had to grab a tag.
Yeah.
And what's funny is about this is some teams, of course, just like went straight through it. They were super good at it. It didn't matter at all. And then we see other people kind of freak out.
Right. What's funny is like the firefighter team did the rock climbing. They're like, oh, we climb ladders on a daily basis. But they were even like, this is a lot harder than a ladder. Which, I mean, obviously, because you're using a lot more of your pulling yourself, whereas the ladder you can step on more.
Yeah, I'm blanking on their names right now, but two of my favorite reactions were the grandparents when they, like, because they were kind of freaking out when they got up there, which I thought was kind of funny. And then, again, Kashiri and Karishma, they both were totally, like, psyching themselves out. And then the other one was, like, trying to cheer them on from the bottom, and then they would, like, it was just very funny how they're both so different doing this race, so I really appreciated that. Then we get to the pit stop. First place again this week, which is crazy, is Ricky and Cesar. They are just killing it. This is their third win in a row, I believe.
Yeah, because they got second the first two times, and they've had the first time.
Yeah.
Three. And I'm cheering for Shane and Juan.
Yeah.
Pilots, and they were almost there.
They got
first.
second. Yeah, they were really close.
Second.
And then this week on The Amazing Race, the cousins Kashir and Krishma were the ones sent home. It is unfortunate, but I will say it was one of those episodes where it was pretty obvious kind of early. Well, like at some point, it was kind of like, is it going to be them or is it going to be the firefighters, Sunny and Busy? It was like, I don't know which way it's going to go.
Sunny and Busy, they fall behind, but then they knock it out because they jump ahead so fast.
It's like they have this secret power that they just like can skate through some of those things, no pun intended, really quickly.
Too surprised that the cousins were out, considering they almost got out last week too.
They were very fun to watch, though, I will say.
They are.
But this is also a great indication of how much the placements flip-flop, because they were, I would say, very middle of the pack those first few episodes of the season, and then you see them fall to the bottom, and then that's how it goes. But on the flip side, you have the mom and son duo, who were almost in last place every single time, and now they're kind of in the top through the last two episodes.
But they get 4th or 5th this time, and last week they got 3rd.
Yeah, so it's incredible how the placements, and that's what would be interesting to see Ricky and Cesar kind of fall down a little bit, because I'd love to see these placements kind of keep jumping around.
I imagine that eventually they will hit a challenge that they don't struggle with, and that will knock them down.
Yeah.
I mean, you could be wrong. Maybe they're great at everything they do.
I will say I thought about something, and this is my last point for today, but I thought about something, which is that Cesar speaks Spanish, and I'm wondering if that is helping them, because they have been going to Latin-based countries thus far.
I'm sure he probably can navigate the maps very well, and if he has a question, he can speak to the locals.
Yeah.
So
I'm wondering if that will keep playing to their advantage, as opposed to teams who maybe are not familiar with that language.
Yeah, absolutely, I would say so.
I think that's really interesting. Well, this season's been awesome. Keep tuning in. The Amazing Race Wednesdays on CBS, and of course streaming on Paramount+.